Tell me about your vision.
I would really love for everyone to just understand that the things around us don't necessarily, might not necessarily match who we're meant to be. And I
Okay.
think that's a big thing when you realize that half the population fit into like one personality pack or
Yeah.
group. I call them packs because I use animals to signify my personality type. So that's a lot of people that fit into one pack, and their values and their desires tend to get pushed on the other half of the
Yeah.
population. I think it's just important. My vision is that everyone figures out what truly makes them happy.
Yeah.
So, and as early as possible, so then they can kind of go towards that for the rest of their life versus like spending half our lives pursuing something that we really don't love.
And with that being said, I think that there's a little bit more of a challenge with social media. How does that take place in this personality, and where do you go with that?
It's great. I'm just going to disclose. I have a student, and I always like to ask my students, if a genie came out of the bottle and gave you one wish, what would you want to be? And I had a student say, real estate agent. I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, I want to know what you want to do because I can help you try to get towards that path, right? Or go
Yeah.
on that path. And I was like, why do you want to be a real estate agent? And she was like, the lifestyle. I was like, the lifestyle. What are you talking about? I'm like, are you watching too much Selling Sunset? And I think that was a big part of it. Like, I think in general, she was
Yeah.
of the personality type that is really into excitement and visceral like sensation. So something like watching like social media or
Yeah.
looking at social media and watching these shows that really glamorize um, like professions would have a strong effect on her. Even
Yeah.
though I had to break it to her that that's not really the reality. Like, but it still doesn't mean that you can't find an exciting life. You just got to go towards that versus like chasing these illusions, right?
Absolutely. And it's so funny you say that, Eric. I am a real estate agent.
Oh
And
no.
I'm sitting here like, what? Like full time? That's what I am. I wanted to go like this. Tell me more. Because
Yeah.
when,
Oh, sorry.
when you said Selling Sunset, I was like, she had to be watching that. She had to be
Mhm.
watching something that glamorized the field. So if she is watching right now, slow down, take a look, read a little bit more. It's not the sunset or the sunrise. It's literally um something you definitely have to work at. And as I speak to most individuals on here as entrepreneurs and people such as yourself that are life coaches and authors, it's this big thing that I realize that influences not only us as adults but children, and this idea of what life could be like. If I must mention, if I can mention, my 10-year-old had saw me reading a book, and it says Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And she goes, Mom, are you a millionaire? And I was like, I'm gonna be. And she said, Eric, she ran across the house and she's yelling, Mom's a millionaire. Mom's gonna be a millionaire. And so, with that being said, I realized how our personalities and how the world can influence what we do and who we are on the inside. So, as you have started with such younger children, and have you had some students all the way through college? And if so, what changes did you notice?
It really depends on their personality. I would admit that I probably work best with certain personality types. And
Mhm.
I don't want to get into all the specifics, but the personality types that are a little more soul searching. So obviously something that what I'm bringing is really appealing to them, but they don't necessarily know it's
Yes.
appealing until they hear it. And then they're like, oh, okay. It's like, this is great. So I think I've seen those students tend to work with me for a long period of time. And there's nothing more satisfying than, like, let's say 10 years after you stop working with someone and they text you and you're like, hey, I just want to say hi and let you know that all that personality typing stuff really meant to me because I really discovered myself. I have a student who, what they told me, first thing they told me was for that genie question, right? Was they're like, I want to be governor of North Carolina. And I'm like, that's great. Because actually, I know where that's going. Now, you might not necessarily get there, but I definitely know it means that you're on the path. You know what your direction is. And
Yeah.
whether you become governor of North Carolina or something else within politics, like I get that. And I've worked with this student through college, and now he's going to Georgetown. And I think he's on the right path because he truly knows what he wants, and I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. That's amazing to hear. And I love how you help them figure it out, right? And the way that I'm getting this, at your personality is protruding through the camera, right? I feel a soulfulness in you. So it's like you're totally easygoing and flow. And with that allows a lot of people that may meet with you to be able to just calmly figure out their personality. You know what I mean? Rather than this I have to do it and I have to figure it out now, or I may not be what I want to be on, in the future or even now. um how did you get started?
It's funny, like I had mentioned my academic background was in screenwriting, and I
Yes.
studied that at UCLA. But before then, I was that same awkward student that I tend to work with all the time. Or I would say awkward. I was probably moody. I
Okay.
guess that might be the same thing. And so, I felt a little different. My personality is one of the personality types that's not that common. I mean, but there's a lot. There's like maybe 8 personality types that are like in 16% of the
Okay.
population, which is kind of small. So you grow up feeling that way, and you're like, oh God, like why are my values different than other people's values? Maybe I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And being that way, I read up a lot on different personality typing systems and methodologies like MBTI and well, I guess that's Myers Briggs and the Enneagram, and I
Mm.
studied those. And eventually, I went to college for something totally different. But coming out of that, I realized, oh, this is really fun to learn about these things. And I started my own education company at that point, and that's when I really started using it and developing my personality typing methodology more.
Okay.
We saw about 1,000 students a year, so I would teach my teachers to use it in that
Yeah.
realm, and that's kind of where this all developed from.
That's awesome. And when you work with individuals, is writing one of the things that you have them do?
Yes.
Yeah.
I generally that's what I tend to get hired for at the beginning.
Mhm.
And then I lean into the life coaching quite a bit because I think life
Okay.
coaching is one of those things that, I think as we're older, we realize, oh, this is an important aspect, just like therapy, right? Everybody should go to therapy. I mean, who doesn't? Like, it's always helpful. But I
Yeah.
think at a younger age, especially with parents, they're not necessarily going to say, oh, I'd rather have my kid learn how to do algebra or
Right.
whatever versus something like this, when I think it's important because that's kind of how you get kids on the right path. Like intra and interpersonal intelligence are so important. And then I think they're kind of not developed at an early age because we don't learn that in school.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna ask, what did you get your degree in?
Oh, I was an English and screenwriting major. So
Oh,
I guess English
okay.
is, yeah, English, you're reading a lot. I mean, that's essentially what, I always tell kids, like when they do all the character personality stuff, when they're in school, and when they read books, I'm like, it's not about knowing what happens in the book, because at the end of your life, no one's going to come up to you and say, okay, I'm going to test you on all the books you read. And do you remember what happened in chapter 12 of Moby Dick? Like,
Yeah.
no one's going to care about that stuff. But I think what's important is you're meeting these fictional characters, and these fictional characters are just like real people. They're really deep. They have feelings. Why do they feel a certain way? And I think it's learning about them is helping us learn about ourselves, ideally. But I think a lot of that tends to get lost in school, where kids are just focused on remembering what happens in the book. But it's like, no, understand the people, because that'll help you understand yourself and the people around you.
Oh, that's never thought of it like that. And as I sit here and think about kids doing book reports, right? I wonder, is that really the focus, is the characters rather than the outcome of the book? Interesting. Never thought about that at all. Um, what's your why?
Why? Oh, that's, I actually don't necessarily think of why I do things as
Mhm.
much as long as it's making me feel good. And I know that's such a simplistic mode of thought, but I generally think that if something is making you feel good while you do it and
Yeah.
time goes quickly while you're doing it, then I think you got your why already.
Okay. And that's that statement that's often said, to do something that doesn't make you feel like you're at work, or do something that makes you happy, and expand on that. So I totally get that. And a lot of people do have this big why. And so I love the simplicity of of that, because it definitely says, you don't have to necessarily have this big why. Um, and regarding your vision and your methodology of personality, how many personality types are there, or that
So
you
there are,
mentioned?
yeah, there are 16 types. And I think a lot of people will be familiar with that because I think Myers-Briggs has, not that I think, I know, Myers-Briggs has 16 types.
Okay.
And they are similar to mine, but I think I've evolved it through my, I won't say experimentation, but my practical research and observation with my education company. And mine focuses more on motivations and desires. So
Okay.
this is going to get kind of wonky, but
No,
I find there are 4 different personality packs, and
okay.
each one of those has a core desire. And then within those personality packs, there are 4 animal personalities.
Okay.
So 4 times 4 is 16. So if you're within a pack, you're going to share a lot more in common with the animal types within that pack versus the animal types like in this pack, right? And I think
Yes.
that's the thing. It's like we are similar to people, but we're also going to be different in our own way. And I think if you think of like one of the packs, their main desire is safety and security. And
Yeah.
then another pack, their main desire is like visceral excitement. And I think those two things are very like in conflict, right? So you can imagine the conflict that's going to happen with someone who wants to always feel somewhat comfortable and safe, and someone who's like, no, I want like things thrown at me because it's exciting, you know? And so animal types within those packs are going to relate to each other better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I get that totally. And with learning the personality, is there a space or an area in which, yes, you might be that personality, but there's a certain time or a certain point in your life that you may shift to a different personality?
I don't believe in shifting or changing. I do think we grow
Okay.
into better versions of who we are or worse versions.
Okay.
I'm always of the like, because I worry because so the gatherer types, that's one of the personality packs. They
Okay.
love safety and security, and they make about half the population. So they're the type of person who tells, let's say, the one who likes visceral excitement. Let's say there you have a kid who's I call them hunters, right? So hunters love like grabbing things and doing things within their surroundings. They love things thrown at them that are different, so they can like react to it. If you have a kid like that, a gatherer kid parent would probably say like, "Hey, you know what? You're like that, but just wait till you get older. You're going to want to settle down, and you're going to want to have kids, and da 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 da." And it's like, well, no, that they only think that because you're a gatherer. So that's what your natural desire is for comfort,
Yes.
safety, security, building a family, building a home.
Yeah.
But a hunter, they like Hemingway as a hunter, they will just travel the whole world like their whole life and have all these different experiences. And they might have kids, they might not, they might settle down, they might not. But whatever they're going to do, they're going to do it not because they want to feel safe. They're going to do it because they want to like feel like the world is like spinning them around, And I'm not saying either one of those is bad or good. I think it's just funny to see the influence the outside influence from how different personalities can just assume that that's
Yes.
something that we all want when it's
Yes.
not.
And what's crazy is, as I'm sitting here thinking about number one of being a business owner, and then on the other side of that is being a parent. You just said something that we all have this thought process of like, oh, you'll settle down, we don't ever, and like you said, it's not wrong, but in my head, I'm like, I know I'm right? Because I'm an adult and I know that I'm right. But as you just stated, never thinking that that's something that because they're different, you know what I mean, and they're okay with being the hunter, right? And I'm okay with being safe and secure. And I guess that's another thing. It's not only social media that presses upon a child or a person's personality or finding out who they are. It's also your parents. It's also in your home. So I that just sounds challenging to me.
Yeah, I had a cousin, and I've been telling this story quite a bit. I was talking to my cousin's kid over New Year's, and my cousin's kid is a hunter, and he has just graduated pharmacy school. And my cousins are both them, or the husband and wife, are gatherers, and they kind of, I won't say forced him, but he very strongly encouraged him to go to pharmacy school. Because pharmacy is a very, I want to say it's a safe profession. That sounds like, but it is. It's like a very steady. You're going to get your shift whenever it
Yeah.
is. I know when you first start, the shifts aren't that great, but like eventually people love to get that 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 shift.
Yeah.
And so I asked my cousin's kid, who's the hunter,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, now that you're graduated, what do you want to do? And he's like, I don't know, as long as it's a job where I don't have to be in the same place all day long. And I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but that is exactly what a pharmacist is going to do.
Yes.
So I said, hey, maybe you should try to get into pharmaceutical sales, because that's something where you can go travel, you can use your experience from pharmacy school. You're going to have to hustle, but that's okay. Hunters do not mind hustling,
Yes.
and you can kind of do the sales aspect. And he's like, oh, that sounds fun. He's like, but I don't want to waste the years of it that I learned at pharmacy school. And I was like, well, yeah, but do you want to waste your life? You only get one of those, and you don't want to do something you don't want to do, right? And I think, but his parents had a hard time seeing that because they're gatherers, right? They're like, wait, no, not the business side. We want him to do the route we know he's going to make money, right?
Yeah.
Or be safe and secure. I'm like, well, number one, you can make a lot of money going to the C-suite on the opposite side, right?
Absolutely.
It's just a different experience. You might have to have years where they're pretty lean, or you might have to have years where you're really stressed out because you're trying to make sales and you're kind of like traveling all over. But funny thing is, hunters don't mind that. They're not stressed out about that stuff. They enjoy it. For them, they're like, wow, this is really fun. Am I going to do well? I don't know. But if I do well, I'm going to get rewarded. And that is kind of fun for them.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a Vision Pro yourself.